Good morning. So my name is Lawren. I'm with LAEDC. Most of you guys know we're a nonprofit here in the region, and we focus on creating jobs, looking ahead at the future of the economy, trying to understand how we're all going to have great jobs in the future, and what those careers will look like in the future. And one of the things we think about is the potential for an earthquake to really impact the job space out there, because a lot of businesses will be hurt after a large earthquake. And so we really wanted to take some time and talk about the guide we put together this year. This came out in January. Hopefully you'll all have a copy with you today, and it's just great practical steps for businesses to take to be prepared for an earthquake. So it's nice. It's a list of to-do things you can do to really put yourself in a better position. So I'd like to start by just thanking BizFed for hosting this series. This is fantastic that they're taking the leadership role in helping our business community be more resilient. So thanks to Tracy and Mitchell and Liz and the whole BizFed team. And also thanks to Wells Fargo, which actually helped us print this guide. So I appreciate their help too. Yeah, our whole idea was, maybe we can put something together that's quick to implement for businesses, where you can just pick one thing off the list every week and knock it out. So that's the whole idea. When we think about business continuity, we think about there's a lot of stuff to consider. You got earthquakes, fires are more in the news, and blackouts as a result of fire preparedness, even cyber attacks, right? What about the next recession? Is your business prepared for that? We do a lot of consulting with businesses to help them think about these things, even things like succession planning, if the owner of a company is preparing for retirement. So, but for today, we'll kind of stick with earthquakes. And so a couple of takeaways we have is, after a big earthquake, and I'm talking, a large one, most of your employees will be at home, or they're going to want to go home to check on things. So you might not have power at the office, so it's a good time to be thinking about, okay, I've got no employees at the office and no power, so how do I keep business going? And there may be other utilities that are down too. Internet could be down, cell phones could be down, so how do you do business in this environment? Well, the good news is there are a lot of resources out there now. Of course, there's our guide, but there's also Outsmart Disaster, which is a state-run initiative, and they've got this thing called the Resilient Business Challenge. It's free. It's outsmartdisaster.com. It's a great thing to check out, and just sign up for that, and they'll give you a lot of tips in addition to the ones I'm providing today. And another good resource out there, if you're interested in cybersecurity, City of LA has got a new cyber lab that's a free resource to businesses, and you can go down and learn a lot from them. I believe that, again, is free. But there's also technologies out there now that are a real help. Things like cloud, right? The cloud wasn't even around when Northridge happened, but now it's a huge asset for backing up your IT systems and data. Satellite phones are helpful after an earthquake if the cell phone networks are down. And we even think about tools like energy storage. It's so much easier to get energy storage on your building now in case you want to try and work off-grid if there's a big power failure in the region. So we'll talk about some of this stuff here today. The one thing I heard loud and clear from all the people who participated in the guide with us is you will not be able to do everything you normally do at your business. You have to really make a short list. What 3 things do we have to do to get the business, running that day? So really think about the critical stuff that you've got to get done, and that's your list, right? Then think about dependencies. Have you got suppliers? Do you have goods that you ship? How is that going to be affected? So you can talk with your suppliers and vendors about what their plans are. Make sure you're on the same page with them. And then how are you going to get in touch with your employees? We have some advice in the guide about technology that you can use for that, but it could be as simple as making sure you've got all their emergency contact info on an updated sheet. A lot of us kind of let those things slide, and it's a good time to renew those. And then, of course, just like you test a tape backup and make sure you can get the data off of it, you can test all these plans we're trying out, right? So we talk a lot about the data piece in our guide because, of course, that's your lifeblood. If you lose all your IT systems, if a wall falls on a computer server, it's probably going to take out all the tape backups with it. So, we encourage you to use the cloud, back things up in the cloud. You can even back up an image of your entire server to the cloud so that if you ever have to start with new hardware, you've already got the image in the cloud. You just load it up. You can even set up your systems to run in the cloud entirely, so you don't need anything on the ground. You can run it all out of the cloud, assuming you've got your access points set up. It could be smartphones, for example. But we have a little appliance at our shop. It's made by Datto, and every night it does backups to the cloud and images of our servers. And if we ever need to, we can call our IT provider and actually get all the applications running in the cloud and run stuff there, like payroll and accounting and that kind of thing. Odds are you're going to need to use smartphones to get to your IT systems. And we can talk more about smartphones, the cell phone network resilience in a minute. But if you're stuck at home and there's damage on the freeways, odds are people are going to have to do a lot of work remotely. So, prepare your staff to work from home. And if you're going to be adding applications like banking apps to those phones, then make sure you're putting in double layer authentication, things like that, just to make sure you don't get hacked. And you can also move other important documents to the cloud. Maybe you've got your business license or insurance paperwork. You can just take pictures of that. Sometimes it sounds like a big deal to move it to the cloud, but if you're using email that's based in the cloud, if you just email it to yourself, it's backed up in the cloud. So pictures of your assets, pictures of your important documents. Also, the utility companies I've talked to tell me that after a big earthquake, there's going to be a period of time where the power's coming up, going down, coming up, going down, as they try and stabilize the grid. That's very hard on your computers. So it's good to have an uninterruptible power supply that's actually got shut down software connected to your server, and it can shut it down in an orderly fashion. And then you can also think about, if I have to leave the office for whatever reason, if it's red tagged, have I got some portable systems like laptops? So those are all good things to think about. And then again, just thinking about your workers, right? Probably your most important asset. Make sure they've got the tools they're going to need to work from home. Maybe even a solar charger to charge up their smartphones if they're trying to work on their smartphone. We actually recommend that in the guide. And then try and cross-train folks. If you got one person that knows how to run payroll, think about cross-training one or two folks so they can perform that if one person's out of the office. All right. So there's this customer-facing piece too, right? One of the big ones is, where's your website hosted? We make sure we host our website out of the region in the cloud so that it's unaffected by anything happening on the ground. And then you also have to think about resetting expectations for customers. You might have orders in process, and you can put something on your website just to say, hey, we've experienced a disruption, reset some expectations for your services and deliveries. You may look to have your phone picked up by an out-of-state employee rather than just having it come to the office. There may be ways to set up your phones so that inbound phone calls get answered. You can even set up an answering service if need be. But these are sort of the things that, if you think about them in advance, it gets a lot easier. And then the financial piece, really important, right? Trying to pre-establish lines of access, lines of credit with your bank. You don't want to have to do that after an earthquake. You want that set up, if you need access to capital. Most insurance policies out there do not cover earthquake interruption. So you might spend one day this week, just check your policy, see if it's covered. You can buy that kind of coverage on the secondary market through a broker. Most of the majors don't cover earthquakes, so just something to think about. And, if you're relying on checks to be delivered through the U.S. Postal Service to your office, that could be a vulnerability for a little while. So we encourage folks to think about, moving to ACH and ways to accept money that's electronic, doesn't rely on the mailbox. Same with
small business
with
administration
payroll, right?
are great for
Obviously
emergency
there's
loans.
advantages and direct
The SBA
deposit.
actually makes loans to homeowners
In fact,
too.
we have
So,
there's some businesses
after
out
an
there that
emergency is
automate,
declared, and there's
set it up
numbers
so that
and
after a
contact
large
information for
earthquake, they
both
can
those
run
entities in the guide.
payroll.
And then
without all
lastly,
the paperwork.
if you have a
They're
safe
gonna
way to
process the
keep some
exact same
cash on
payroll they
hand for the
processed
business
last time.
in one way or another, that's probably
after an
helpful
earthquake,
because
just to make sure that they're putting some money into their employees' pockets, because they're going to have a lot of expenses
until that
after
gets
an
resolved.
earthquake too. And then there's
The
all
nice thing
there's
to
going to be
know
a
is
lot
that
more
we've got some
discussion
great
around
resources in
physical
the state,
facilities
both,
today, but
California
I'll just mention
iBank and
most buildings are designed with life safety in mind so that you can get out, but they're not necessarily designed to be operational after that. And really, as a business, you want to have a physical facility after, that you can go back to. So take a step this year. Just have an inspection done or talk to your landlord, get a report on seismic for the building, and budget something this year. It could be just a baby step, but put something on the budget to say, you know what, we're going to take care of the low-hanging fruit here. There's a couple of things we can brace and bolt so that the facility is more likely to be usable. A lot of folks are thinking about energy storage, especially with the wildfires. This has drawn a lot of attention to the fact, what do we do if there's a power outage? So it's getting more economical now to install solar plus storage. And if you set it up so you can go off grid, who cares what's happening with the utility power service? You could go offline and keep power for your business indefinitely if you set that up in advance. There may be some economic reasons to do that in the future too if the time of use rates start coming in where it gets expensive to use power later in the afternoon. You could use stored power at that time. So one last thing I'll mention is it could be hard to get city inspectors to come out after an earthquake because they're going to be backlogged. So if you talk to the city about using certified inspectors, independent engineers to come in and say your property is safe to get back into, that could save you a lot of days. So something to think about, and you could ask, I don't know if you all are in the city of South Pass or nearby, but you could check with your city on that. And then lastly, check, make sure everything works the way you expect it to. Can your employee actually use that new app that they loaded on their smartphone to get into the accounting system? Can you actually run off grid if you set up that system? So it's just these little things where you actually have to make sure your recovery plan works. So that's the real takeaways from the guide and from our experience talking to all the experts in the region. I hope you'll share this guide. Take it around and let people know about it. Our hope is that enough businesses take some steps. Knock out one step every week, and that when we have a big earthquake, the economy won't be that dramatically impacted. Your business will continue much more easily than if you hadn't taken any steps, and that's really our hope. So. You can find this online at leedc.org/EQ for earthquake. And that's kind of the extent of my presentation. So if you have a quick question or two, I'd be happy to take one. Yeah.
So going back to the building inspection, do you recommend you do that with a city inspector or with someone engineer?
There are a lot of different engineers that are available for that. Even our sponsor here today, right, Optimum, they've got inspectors. There are a variety of ways you can get that done. I think probably the city is not necessarily your best first call on that. But there are folks that specialize in that, and Optimum's certainly a great one to talk to about that. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Liz.
When you're trying to call a engineer and you need to get your property assessed, I think our next speaker can also help with that. Kenneth Odell joined MHP Inc. in 1989. In 1989, after graduating from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with a Bachelor of Science degree in Architectural Engineering. At MHP, as one of the 5 principals, he manages design and seismic